Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today I'm really excited about the interview that I've got lined up for you. I had the opportunity to interview Jason Altenburg over at Lazy Boy. This interview actually was a pretty long one. It ended up being over an hour long, but if you look in the description below, you'll see kind of little chapter markers that I put in place to kind of focus you on the stuff that you might be interested in. The first half of the video was kind of like what it's like to have Domo for a year or two. And we talk a lot about how Lazy Boy are using Domo to improve their B2B experience, their B2C experience, and their supply chain. In the second half of the video, we spend more time talking about how Jason was able to leverage Domo to nurture his own personal data curiosity. We talk about how he was able to turn these weekend pet projects into strategic conversations he was having with leadership, which turned into kind of digital transformation initiatives, which ultimately culminated in him accepting more responsibility in the Domo platform, and which came with a tidy little promotion and raise and all of those things. So congratulations, Jason. If you like this content, if you like this style of video, leave a comment, like, subscribe, do all the things, but also be aware, in April, we're going to be launching the Domo User Exchange Conference. It's a user conference that I'm organizing to provide content like this, but also to actually provide hands-on tutorials and where we're going to distribute code where you're hearing from experts on how to actually get stuff done in Domo. So again, like, subscribe, do all the things, and I hope to see you in April. Catch you soon.
So here we go. Jason, who are you? What do you do?
I'm Jason Altenburg. I'm a shared services software developer here at Lazy Boy. I handle the business intelligence relationship with our business from the IT side.
You mentioned that you initially started, right? You had this background in Excel and you were going to bring those skills to the table. Over the years, you've covered a couple different roles at Lazy Boy. How does data play into furniture?
Lazy Boy previously was operated under a wholesale dealer model. There were some retail stores, but nothing quite what we
Right.
embarked upon 11 years ago. Since then, our business has grown immensely. We went from having a single DC to having 4 DCs to having 6 DCs to
Sorry,
having
DC.
8 DCs, regional distribution centers. So
Okay.
places that are delivering
Yeah.
furniture to customers across
Yeah.
the United States. Just the customer service area, we were trying to track what's the performance of our agents. And you can't do that without a robust data set that includes agent performance. What are our telephone calls about?
Right.
How long do they take? Who are our top performers?
Do you
We
find
are
yourself also using Domo and the data you accumulate for like a quality control, like what parts fail or what's
we also in Comfort Care handle the field services organization as well as our Dayton service center. And you have to remember that Lazy Boy has a lifetime warranty
amazing.
on frame and mechanism parts.
Hmm.
And that means if you are the original owner and you still have the receipt, we are going to take care of that for you. So we are still servicing people's chairs from the 60s and 70s that they still have the receipt and they need service on their chairs. And so data in that aspect, where are these parts? How many of these parts do we have? How many
Okay.
of these parts do we actually use? We
It's
might
like a
find
strong inventory management type case.
exactly. When it comes to quality, we've done a tremendous amount of work in Comfort Care in trying to build that interface in between our supplier management
Hmm.
area and
Hmm.
our quality control area. The worst thing that can happen is that you're hearing about things from your customers and you're not identifying it
Right.
before it gets to that point. Are we experiencing issues with a particular fabric, a particular leather? Are we experiencing issues with a particular commodity? Are
Hmm.
we, we can see all that as it happens. So if we make a switch in something, say like the finish color, and we get our paint from a different supplier, we can have a meeting and say, we are going to switch on this date. We can have those cards set up in advance and we can see with alerts and notifications, are we experiencing any sort of change in our claim rate or are we still straight on course?
Right. That's that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So actually, this is not the direction that I'd planned to go, but I'm kind of curious now that we're talking about it. Have you started using data other than strictly for reports, alerts? So are you using it to help you improve the customer experience in terms of delivery or
Again, we are heavily invested in the retail experience and in the experience of manufacturing quality furniture.
Mm-hmm.
Delivery is, we have some delivery and some logistics that we manage ourselves, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that we're good at sticking to what we're good at. And so being able to get that information from our delivery providers, even though they are all very different and they do things very differently in different locations,
Yeah.
allows us to see where we might be contributing to a struggle that a delivery provider has.
Right.
uh, if we are transferring on our end a piece of furniture multiple times, say
Yeah.
that we take it to one place, then we take it to another place, and then it ends up at the delivery provider, and then we have another delivery provider who it's just straight from a plant to them, and we experience less claims from the straight transfer,
Right.
then that allows us to identify that maybe there's something that's happening from here to here.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the delivery provider, but it's in the method in which we are getting the
Mm-hmm.
furniture or getting the items to that delivery provider.
As you were describing that, it reminded me of another customer I was working with. They big electronics distributor, but they would distribute to like both big retail locations, but also like smaller mom and pop kind of situations and everything in between. And the problem that, you know, the smaller you get, the less sophisticated your reporting tends to be. And so they would end up placing a lot of like last minute orders because, ah, shoot, I ran out of part XYZ for my customer.
Yes.
And so one of the solutions that this company built is they built a way to track, okay, this person tends to order this much of this quantity stuff. And so they could proactively say, hey, we think you're getting low on your inventory and you have seasonality in your data. Do you want to up your order? Um, and then it even went a step further where they installed an order management system at their customer to help their customer place the orders, and then they could, track what have they put in, what is your inventory over there, what do we think you're going to get, what orders have you placed, and again smooth out that ordering process. Just random aside.
So, and
It's
you also talked about, and I don't think that I really touched on it when you said, are we able to share information with our vendors?
Yeah.
It's not just our vendors, because we, as I mentioned, have a strong retail presence in the United States,
Right.
but we have a blended business model. So we also have our wholesale dealers. When you're interacting with multiple vendors that you're dealing with through a wholesale model, one of the things that you really don't want to do is take data from one store that is owned by a completely different person and try to share that with another person. So being able
Yeah.
to anonymize the data
Mm-hmm.
and take as an aggregate
Mm-hmm.
everybody and compare them to one other dealer, or even just take a similar set of dealers and be able
Right.
to anonymize that and aggregate it and say, here's where you perform amongst other dealers that
Mm-hmm.
we feel are similar to you. And then we can show that and we can present it. And not only can we do it on an ad hoc basis
Mm-hmm.
very easily, but once we have those beast modes written, once we have those ETLs in place, it's there whenever our account executives want to go and retrieve that to show that dealer in a day by day comparison, if that's
Uh-huh.
what they need to see, to
Right.
be able to understand where their performance is among those dealers in their area.
And so are your representatives going into the shop and like pulling up the whether it's the dashboard or the app, or are you actually distributing it to the dealer themselves like as a PDF or a CSV? Like how are you distributing that?
Currently, it is mainly that our account executives are all able to access these
Mm,
dashboards, and
mm,
they're able
mm,
to do
mm.
so from their company phones.
Right.
So, but you, this is way better than receiving an enormous CSV file on a monthly basis,
Right.
which then they have to do all of that work on their own to
Right.
be able to understand
To understand what
and
they're
show how to
seeing.
distribute those things. And again, that was quite some time ago. There have been many interim steps, but
Hmm.
this is really the way that we use Domo for our account executives is really a big revolutionary step for Lazy Boy as far as their reporting goes.
Mark from NLC Mutual came on to the YouTube video, and guys, I'll share the link if you're interested. And he was talking about how they're using Domo Publish, and Domo publish typically is used to take data from your Domo instance and then push it to another customer's Domo instance, but they're actually doing it backwards, where um, NLC Mutual has like different chapters in each state. Each state, they accumulate their own data. They'll send it back to HQ. HQ mashes it up together and anonymizes it, right? So each state can only see their data, but they can see how they rank against all of the other states. And so the states get back this like enriched data, which isn't quite the same what you're talking about here, but this idea of saying, hey, I'm a store in Wisconsin and I want to see myself compared to either stores in Wisconsin or stores that are like me in size. That's
Yeah,
cool. That is super
and
cool.
I think it's interesting too because I don't think that you asked this or you touched on it, but it really changes the way that we do meetings too.
Okay.
Instead of and I guess this is something too that I feel like was pushed a little bit by Domo since the beginning is that instead of having boss with a question, ask the analyst goes back to their desk for a week, comes
Mm-hmm.
back with a chart, presents it to boss has a completely different question at this
Right.
point, or that they don't feel like the analyst got the question right or things like that. Is that now I can be in the meeting and I can, my boss doesn't have to come to me to ask me the question. Ideally, my boss has a set of cards that they can utilize, but if they're going to something they're a little bit, a little bit unfamiliar for,
Mm-hmm.
or we don't have those cards set up, or they go to a meeting and they find, hey, we've got some questions and I'm sure the data's out there. You can bring your analyst in the meeting and they can sit there and they can answer the questions as they're coming up. So
Right.
we can say, instead of, hey, let's table that and let's get back to it in a week, we can say, all right, that's our question. Can you do that? Sure. 2 minutes later, we're looking at the chart and we're discussing it. We're able to move
Right.
in that same direction instead of kind of going many directions all at once.
Yeah.
We can start a meeting with a question,
Yeah.
and hopefully by the end of it we have an action plan on how to address it, instead of an action plan that includes gathering reports and
Right.
getting the data and understanding where we're actually at right now.
My One of my favorite experiences as a consultant, I was working at a car company, and we were having a meeting, and in the back, like in the meeting room against, there was this huge, like, I don't know, 54-inch, is 54 inches huge? I don't know. It was a big TV. It was a big TV. And I'm watching it and like I'm trying to pay attention to the meeting, but there's like Domo cards coming across the thing. I'm like, dude, what's going on there? And he said, oh yeah, we every time we have an executive meeting, we actually use Domo cards to run the meeting, and we expect people to know the contents of the card before they show up to the meeting. And he's like, Jay, you built that one. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's super cool. That was a
Yeah.
super cool experience. I do really appreciate how Domo, like when you have Domo and your data is, not to use the buzzwords like I drank the Kool-Aid, but the data is there, right? And all you have to do is just look at the card.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Okay.
I visited one of our when I visited Dayton 6, our manufacturing plant, and I got the opportunity to check out our service center down there.
Mm-hmm.
We also had the old research and development building across the street.
Right.
I went over to their facility to take a look around and to meet some new people. That was really the entire purpose of my visit. I went in, we saw a piece of furniture. They were discussing an issue with the furniture. A question came up. I answered it by pulling up a chart on my phone, and they were blown away. I
Yeah.
mean, that I could just grab the data like that, and
Mm-hmm.
I think I made a few other people hop onto our Domo experience at that point, because I know that there's at least two of the engineers down there that I talked to a lot more than I did before the trip.
That's super cool. So while we're talking about the future of Domo at Lazy Boy, I guess, have you seen, I don't want to ask a big shift in your business because in my mind I'm seeing, I think I saw like Bose closed a lot of locations. I see a lot of locations like being pressured by COVID. Don't want to ask you that. But are you seeing a change in the type of data that's becoming important or that is important as we work through the impact of COVID on the economy and all this? Or are there different pressures from the data?
Um, People are spending a lot more time at home
Mm-hmm.
than they ever have. And Well, we want to furnish whole homes, so this has been good for our business because people are wanting to refresh those spaces. So right now our focus, I think, is mostly on our orders, our incoming orders, on our backlog, and on our production capacity.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things about running a production facility right now during this time is that there is an increased demand in the amount of PPE. We need to have a
Right.
lot more space between people. We've basically had to take and rethink and reimagine the way that we are producing the furniture in the plants.
Mm-hmm.
We're really focused on fulfilling the demand that we have been building for our product. Publicly available information too is that prior to COVID, we had actually closed one of our manufacturing facilities in the States. And now with the increased demand, we've actually opened up 2 additional manufacturing facilities.
That's
Um,
cool.
we are, I'd say, very focused right now on our supply chain, on our manufacturing. In addition to that, though, with the global shakeup, with everything that's happened, we are also very heavily focused on what we are going to be able to do when it comes to the supplier side of things, because
Right.
a lot of businesses didn't make it through COVID. They have ceased operations.
Right.
And so we are also focused on making sure that we are providing accurate timelines when it comes to, are we going to be able to source these commodities to be able to build this furniture? Our governor here in Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, recently released a statement, and she said that the resources on our the resources are being spread thin right now, with our
Yeah.
workers being expected to take on many different roles, such as being a worker, a parent,
Yeah.
and also an educator.
Yeah.
And she simply said it is not sustainable.
For sure.
And the question naturally becomes after that, then how do we get back to being sustainable?
Right.
And I think that that's kind of where we're focused on too right now, is now that we have now that we're starting to either become more accommodated to the crisis that we're currently in, or that we're starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel, how do we ensure that our recovery is in alignment with the
Mm-hmm.
recovery of all of our suppliers, all of our customers, and everybody else in between?
Last question, and then I have to get onto what I really wanted to talk about. This is just so fascinating. Like, I just build data flow, so I don't get to talk to people about business too much. But when you think about risk, right? Because when you talk about ensuring your ability to manufacture and meet demand, like that's the $1 million. That's the question. The question is one of risk. How do I minimize risk in terms of my pipeline? So are you embarking on data projects to measure and manage risk?
I think that risk is becoming a very much a high profile category that I think a lot of analytical people think about often
Mm-hmm.
and want to bring to the forefront, but without real scenarios to be able to point at, it's incredibly difficult to show that there is risk. 2 or 3 years ago, if you talked about the risk of a global pandemic shutting down your supply chain and completely hindering your operations, leading to where you would have massive employee shortages, where you wouldn't be able to obtain just about anything, and not only that, but people wouldn't even really be allowed to be in your stores except for a couple dozen at a time,
Mm-hmm.
I think that you would have been laughed out of the room.
Sure.
There's no question in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think that despite how awful it is, in a way, having this to point to when we're talking about managing risk and being able to say, look what happened with COVID.
Yeah.
That's not just one thing. That's not an isolated event.
Right.
Because we can take that as sort of the exclamation point. We can
Right.
say, massive snowstorms in the Northeast have hindered our ability to operate businesses. Massive wildfires on the West Coast have hindered
Mm-hmm.
our ability to operate in California. We had months of rioting over the summer. That was a little bit dicey there in some of our major city
Yeah. Yeah.
retail
Yeah.
locations.
Mm-hmm.
And so not only do we have all of these other events, but then we can simply just punctuate it with, we also have had the COVID-19 pandemic, which affected us in many of these extremely measurable ways.
Mm-hmm. I would love to know, like, if you did an analysis of like where on the map does my supply chain come from, And then like, what are the different ports that it has to go through to get to where we're at? Is there not enough diversification? Question number one. Question number two being, historically, how much have each of these different places been impacted by weather? And so you can say, I can't necessarily predict where we'll be next year, but I can
Exactly.
say that 50% of my product comes through the port of X in California. And that's a potential risk because if that port goes, 50% of, gosh, that could be a fun project.
But it's a great time. It's a great time to be a creative data analyst. I'll tell you that much, because what used to be a pet project a year and a half ago
Right.
of mapping the historical weather patterns of the northeastern United States onto the availability of certain retail locations or things like that, that's a very important thing to do. Mapping the correlation between the California wildfires and how many people are out and about doing shopping, that would have been a pet project. That's
Right.
something that somebody does in their free time. And now this is something that businesses really, they need to know this if they operate in those locations. And they're starting to see that there are seasonal risks, there are things, and then there are things like the pandemic that just come completely out of the blue.
Right.
And we need to be able to be prepared for not only our seasonality, which is, that's kind of your stock and standard. You want to know what's going to happen every year regardless. But when it comes to things that are going to be
disruptive,
anything that's going to be real disruptive, then we need to kind of cast a wider net and start to understand what are all of our inputs and where are our weak points. We need to become anti-fragile, really, is what it is.
I can't wait to talk to you again in a couple months and just be like, so what have you done since last we spoke? Because you're absolutely right. There will be a huge amount of attention on this, I think, moving forward.
You kind of got to pull those things together, like you're saying, and it becomes a lot easier when you have a data platform that allows you access to those data sets pretty much instantaneously, and right out of the box you can get some of that information, or
Well, and
even if
also
you
just makes it easy to have pet projects that you then put into production, right? You can be tinkering away on the weekend, just being like, hey, look at this cool thing I came up with weather, and I just put it on top of sales. Oh, huh. That's actually useful. Or maybe it's not, and you pivot over to something else. But yeah.
But even then, it might become useful in a year, and that's kind of where I was handling a report that we had historically generated for our dealers and for our account executives, and allowed to handle our warranty credit and our warranty spend with all of our dealers. And it did start out as sort of a pet project of me trying to understand those things as percentages of sales, as understanding where these things are located geographically. I think that many of the times I would find something that I thought was really cool or interesting, and sort of a data analyst nerdy sort of amazing chart. Check it out. Who gets excited over a pie chart or something like that, right?
Well, not a
But
pie chart.
I know I chose that one because I thought you wouldn't raise your hand. Gotcha. No, so we see it. He truly loves all the charts. He can't deny it now. But taking those things that I just thought were sort of interesting, and I found a lot of times that I wasn't the only one who was interested when I had the right audience, when I had the right people in the room. I could take it, out of my back pocket and say, I thought that this was really interesting. I think that this is sort of where we're going with this. I think that we're making a lot of sort of broad stroke statements to try and get to something that we can really easily just point at this map and say, it's right there. That's what we're trying to find.
How do I frame this question? I like that you said, I thought I was the only one, but as I start showing it in the right audience, there's other people that are interested. Is your organization, or are you making strides towards intentionally capturing these interesting ideas, these pet projects that previously maybe would not have had an audience, but now that we recognize the need, are we putting is there a framework going into place for capturing these ideas?
Well, I can say that they've definitely helped me out. As I said earlier in the discussion, I don't think I would be where I'm at if I didn't share some of these interesting things. So I think that our organization is doing a great job at really focusing on people who are data curious. Um, we want to know these things, and the only way that we're going to get there is having that data curiosity and
Mm,
starting to ask those questions.
mhm,
As far as, I guess, cataloging and um, capturing, I think that that's something that we're going to be able to find a lot of usefulness with the search capabilities within Domo. And I
mhm.
think that that has a lot to do with just sort of data governance within Domo and how you structure that. You know, if
Right.
you are able to get your certified content to the top and make it so that the questions that you're asking
Mhm.
are all within the same vocabulary, then
Right.
I think that we've got it right at our fingertips, and we're just, you know, half a dozen very curious people away from making some huge changes.
That's cool. We're gonna have to have a conversation someday. Like, if you were gonna have a data curiosity competition, or like a way of harnessing data curiosity at your organization, especially like, a lot of people are taking the time to learn Python on, well, maybe not now because we're also burnt out, but people are slash were taking the time to pick up pet projects, learn Python on the weekend, learn a
Mm-hmm.
little JavaScript, learn something, right? I think people are naturally curious. I love Domo for being a platform that makes it easy to be curious. And then just $1 million question is, how do you harness that curiosity? So I think that's a question I'm going to ask you again in a couple months as well.
That's a great question. I mean, it is, it has a lot to do with engagement. You know,
Mm,
you really got to have a good relationship, and you have to allow space for people to allow space for people to fail. And I know that sounds very cliche, as much as the agile methodology kind of thing, you know, fail early, fail often, all that. But it is that you have to really allow people to try stuff that doesn't work.
right.
And that's, I mean, if you write code, you know, that's what happens most of the time is
Yeah.
you type a bunch of stuff up, you hit enter, you hope for something to happen, and something else entirely happens, and then you're in your task manager trying to shut down a process. So, you know,
Yeah.
there's you got to kind of allow that space and make sure that you've got the guardrails in the appropriate locations, you know.
Yes. If you were going to tie that analogy to 4 or 5 specific things in Domo that people should be using to establish these guardrails, to light up the data. Oh,
Yeah.
God. What would that look like? What do you think? Top 5 features.
Right now, I'm really trying to push the alerts feature. I think that it's extremely powerful. I don't think a lot of people are utilizing it.
Hmm.
Um, in addition, I think that we have a lot of opportunity with using ETL, the Magic ETL tool. It makes it
Mhm.
really simple for people that don't think in code, or they're not writing SQL every day, to be able to create those
Right.
powerhouse data sets. Um, a kind of a small side note with that too is that that's where I think the sharing comes into focus, is that you let people play, and then you take what's good and you certify it and you give it to everybody else, and that's how
Yes.
you sort of share that thing through Domo, especially with Magic ETL, because it makes it very simple to
Yes.
do crazy awesome things. And not only that, but like the certification process, you have somebody that does think in code take a look over it
To make
and
sure it's
maybe
good.
eliminate a couple of steps, so that, you know, you can take I'm sure you've done this many times, where you take a data flow that takes an hour to execute and you make it run in 5 minutes, just by reducing some unnecessary clauses and things like that.
Oh yeah, all the
um
time.
I guess
For the discovery though, like ETL tools, I think makes it easy to play, but in terms of like discovering something, especially
yeah,
if I'm handed like a
public
data
space.
set that I don't know so well.
Yeah, I think that there are other BI tools out there that do a little bit better with the public spaces available for data. And I think that that's something that we could do a little bit differently with Domo. I think that the Dojo, I mean, obviously that's how we know each other, is a great tool. I think that's something that, with appropriate integration within an organization and out externally, I
Mhm.
guess that's what I'm saying, is that that's the area where you can get a lot more value out of the tool, and you
Hmm.
can see the questions that other people are asking about
Interesting.
their data, And that allows you to think, oh my gosh, I could do the exact same thing. I saw on the dojo a question about what turnover rate was and how do you do that and what does it look like with a calendar. And I thought to myself, I have we maintain this thing that it's a big list of, essentially it's employees, start date, end date.
Yeah.
And we're constantly asking that question, and we have these reports that go out and we have these other things. And I said, but now I just turn them into a data set, and all I need to do is copy the example that somebody here set out in the dojo in basically painstaking detail of exactly what I needed to do. And I think it took me a day and a half, and I had it up and running, and I could say, here's our turnover rate, here's our attrition rate.
Jason, that was like the perfect plug for the Domo dojo. My mind is blown.
I'm excited about it. Take that community and build it out so that we can really show that we are able to harness not only the best and brightest people on the public side of things, but the people that are also utilizing it within their corporate environments or within their environments. And also that we have the people from Domo that all can contribute to helping everybody with their problems in a quick and easy manner.
Too good.
It's good stuff.
All right, man. I do really appreciate you. Thank you so much for taking the time to come speak with me. And I really enjoyed our conversation about risk and the way people can end up using data to, manage that risk and see how that's going to impact us in the coming, let's just say days, and really mean months, but hopefully not years.
2 weeks.
Too dark an ending. Anyway.
No, I think that it's been really great talking to you, Jay. You are brilliant with what you do. And if you'd like to talk some other time, you're saying around July or so, I would really look forward to that. This conversation has really made me think about what my new role at Lazy Boy means, helping me understand, and think about even what is the focus. If I were the CEO of the company, then what is it that I'm really focused on right now? As a technology partner to the company through Domo, I need to really focus on those areas as well and enable them to deliver those metrics to that executive so that they can go like this and say, here's where we're at right now.
Yeah, I'd be really happy to have a follow-up conversation about that.
All right, sounds good.
Jason, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jay.
Have a good one. Bye.